Hello everyone, my name is Kel Sounds, and today I want to show you how to turn a sawtooth wave inside a faceplant from this to more saturated, beefy sound with snap heap and some post-processing. All this is just a normal sawtooth wave with some noise layered on top of it with a high pass filter. And then of course for the main focus here of the video is going to be what's inside this snap heap. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the processing chain here inside of the snap heap. But yeah, let's dive in. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do, of course, get our generators going. So I'm going to hit the analog generator, and then I'm going to make a new group and hit the noise generator. And then for the output, you can click on envelope. And I'm just going to turn that off for now. Then I'm going to go ahead and enable unison and set the voices to 2. And then of course, inside the sound it had some stereo information. So I'm going to go ahead and increase the spread to 40%. And then I'm going to increase the detune to, I think, around 30 or 35%. So I'm going to right click and hit 35. And let's see what that sounds like. And so for the phase randomness, I'm going to go ahead and set it to 180. So that way the two voices inside of the oscillator start at random positions. And then for the envelope, we're going to leave everything alone and leave the gain alone. We're going to leave these settings alone. And so now we're going to come over here to the, actually, for the first group, go ahead and rename it Sawtooth. And now we're going to come down here for the noise group. I'm going to rename it noise. Then I'm going to turn it on. I'm going to come down here and add a high pass filter. So I'm going to add filter, high pass. And of course, we're going to want to go ahead and adjust the cutoff so that way it's not interfering with the frequencies of the sawtooth wave. The noise layer is just mainly to add more grit to the bass. So there's a little bit more high end. That sounds a little bit loud, so I'm going to go ahead and come down here to the gain. And then I think around -28 should be good. Perfect. And then for the cutoff, I think I like it around 8,000 hertz, which is pretty good. All right, and everything else we're just going to leave alone. So yeah, that's perfect. All right, so that is it for the generator section. And instead of adding the snap heap separately inside of here, I'm just going to add it inside of the preset. So that way when you guys download it, you don't have to like download the preset and the snap heap preset. It'll just be inside of faceplant. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my snap heap, and we're going to add a new group, and we're just going to call this, we're just going to call it the Fattening. Fattening, I think that's how you spell that. The Fattening. So yeah, this is just going to be beefing up the sawtooth, and all this is just saturator and shaper table, so just saturating the sound. And so the first thing that I added, of course, is one of my favorite ecosystem snap-ins, Faturator. And for the drive, I set it to around 35%. So I'm going to right click and hit 35, and then I went ahead and added another snap-in, and I'm going to add shaper table. And of course, my favorite shape here is tension, so I'm going to go ahead and come over here to the wave shaping distortion and hit tension. Then I set the frame to, I think, 100, around like 160. Oh, that's kind of loud, so I'm going to go ahead and turn this gain down. Yeah, around 160, 165. Okay, and then for the drive, I set it to, I think, around 8. So I'm going to right click and hit 8. And then for the mix, I set it to 48. So I'm going to right click and hit 48. So it's already fattening up more, as you can hear. So without, and then with, oh yeah, it's definitely a whole lot louder. So I'm going to go ahead and lower the volume down a bit more. And then for the shaper tape, why do I keep saying shaper tabor? Why is that hard to, you know what, it doesn't matter. Okay, for the shaper table, I added an LFO, so I'm going to hit new group down here and rename this ST, short for shaper tabor. Shaper tabor. I'm going to start calling it that if I can't fix it. And then I grabbed an LFO, And then for the LFO modulator, I hit sustain, and then I modulated the frames for the shaper table. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the plus, and then modulate it. And then of course, also don't forget to right click down here on the bottom left arrow, and then for note trigger, hit always trigger from note on. So that way, every time a note is being played, it triggers the LFO. And I'm going to go ahead and right click for the LFO and hit 14. And then for the next snap-in, I went ahead and added a multipass. And inside of this multipass, I just added a disperser set to certain frequencies. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the multipass and right-click this split 2 frequency band to, I think it was 600, and then right-click the split 3 frequency band to 1600, and then go ahead and add a disperser. And then for the frequency range, go ahead and right-click and hit 1500. For the amount, I left at 16, and then for the pinch, I'm going to right-click and hit 0.75. And I really like the way that sounded. Wasn't really no specific reason why I added that, I just thought it sounded cooler. And then to kind of bring out the dispersion effect a little bit more, I added a shaper. And I went ahead and did this kind of shape. And the drive I left alone, and then for the mix, I think I set it to like 20. Or 26%, that's pretty good. And then I went ahead and added a slice EQ and boosted a little bit of the high mids. So I'm going to grab a peak filter and boost the high mids a little bit. I think I set the gain to like 2, and then the cutoff to around like 4,000. So yeah, that's pretty good. Alright, and that is the fattening up group. So that's pretty much all I did. So it's just saturation and boosting some frequencies and adding an effect to certain frequencies, such as the dispersion. Yeah, so it's just a faturator, shaper table, or shaper taper, a multipass, and a slice EQ. Okay, so for this next group, I'm going to add a new group and call it boost. And inside of the boost group, I added a multipass, and then I added a 3-band EQ. So I'm going to turn off the 3-band EQ and go inside the multipass and mess around with the kilohertz dynamics snap-in. And so I'm going to come over here to the pre-FX, add a gain, and right-click and hit -10 for the input gain. I'm going to come back over here to my gain inside of the snap heap, double-click so that way it goes back to 0 decibels. Then come back inside the multipass. Then for the high threshold, we're going to pull it all the way up. And so for this first dynamics, we just want to boost the bass frequencies a little bit to make it more beefy. So I'm looking at the signal here. And since I want to boost it a little bit, I'm going to right-click the low threshold and hit -10. And then for the ratio, I'm going to right-click and hit 4. And then for the release, I'm going to turn it down a little bit. And then for the mix, I'm going to turn it down to around like 70 or 75%. Okay, that's perfect. And now we're going to add a dynamics inside of the third lane. And this is going to be for the mids. And so for the mids, I did a little bit of upwards compression and downwards compression. And I also increased the gain. So for the gain, I'm going to right-click and hit 5 decibels. And then for the low threshold, I'm going to hit -26 and do some upwards compression. I'm going to set the ratio to 4. And then for downwards compression, I'm going to set the threshold to, I think, around -17. And then the ratio is going to be set to 7. I'm going to come down here to the mix and dial it down to, I think, around like 40%. Alright, and that is perfect. Now we're going to do the highs, so I'm going to add another dynamics. And then for this dynamics, I just added upwards compression. I didn't do any downwards compression. So for the low threshold, I'm going to right-click and set it to -28. And right-click on the ratio and hit 2. And then I also increased the release. That's pretty good. And I left everything else the same. Okay, so after we got all of our dynamic snap-ins, I'm going to come over here to the post FX and add a gain snap-in, right click and hit 7. So we increase it by 7 decibels. Then I'm going to exit out of the multipass and come over here to the gain and lower it down since it's going to be kind of loud. And then of course for our 3-band EQ, I'm going to go ahead and lower the highs, I think to around like -2. And so the boost group is just adding more presence for the low end. Okay, so now we're going to add another new group and call this stereo stuff. And inside of this group, I added a slice EQ and I added another multipass. And then inside of the slice EQ, I just boosted more of the stereo information that was incoming inside of the snap heap. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a high shelf filter and do this kind of shape. And then I'm going to come over here to these circles and hit the one all the way on the right, which applies to the side channels. And I think I boosted the gain to around 5 decibels. And then I set the cutoff to around 1,400. So the slice EQ kind of makes up for the high frequencies that were ducked down inside of the boost group, except it's doing it for the side channels. All right, now we're going to open up our multipass, and inside of this multipass, I'm going to add a stereo snap-in and turn the width down for the lows. So that way it's in mono. And that's pretty much it for the stereo stuff group. Okay, so now for the final processing. So I'm going to add a new group and call it final processing. And the first thing that I did was add a gain snap-in and right click, set to -9. So now we can turn the gain up over here inside the snap heap. Then I went ahead and added a shaper and did this kind of shape, and I turned the mix down. It's around like 21%. It just adds a little bit of warmth. Then I added a slice EQ and did a cut to the lows. So yeah, I adjusted the Q to I think around like 0.700. And that's pretty good. Then I added a peak filter, did a -1 gain reduction. And I set the Q down a little bit and then set the cutoff to around 515. Then I added another peak filter, set the Q down a little bit. The gain, I didn't really do so much gain reduction, so maybe like 0.50 or something. And I just came over here to the highs of the frequencies. And so I set the cutoff to around like, I think 8,000 kilohertz. And that's pretty much it for the slice EQ. And then of course, the last thing that I did was added a limiter. And I didn't really mess with that too much. And so that is the final processing group. And with all the groups, that is pretty much all I did to saturate this sawtooth wave. But yeah, that is the preset. So I'm actually going to come in here inside of the snap heap and bring up the gain a little bit. So for the out gain, I'll probably set it to like 2. Alright, and that sounds pretty good to me, so I'm just gonna leave it as is. And the bass sounds pretty good with like a auto filter on it, so with some LFO automation, so I'm gonna set the amount up. I think it sounds pretty cool. Let's see what it sounds like without the snap heap. I mean, honestly, that still sounds really good. Alright, sorry, I was just experimenting there. And of course, if you don't want any stereo information inside of the preset, you can just come over here and turn off the unison. Oh, whoops. But I like it with the unison. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and leave the preset available for download on my blog post, so if you want to go ahead and download it, you can. The link will be in the description. But yeah, that's pretty much the preset. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Adios.